So should we use the intro? We can just do it for us, for the vibe.
Sure, let's do it.
Roll the intro, Tyler. Welcome back to Whiskey Uncut. I'm your host, Paul, joined today by the magnanimous.
Oh, wow. So we have new names for ourselves coming
Oh,
into the new
yeah.
year.
I've been collecting a list to pontificate about your excellence.
Good.
Throughout the upcoming season. The magnanimous Doctor of Whiskey, James.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I've had a couple people contact me and ask when the hell we were going to start season 2.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we're back here and we're talking about whiskey again.
Now, we were supposed to start a couple weeks ago, but then I thought it was COVID. But why are you shaking your head,
Because
James?
we just had this conversation about how you claim to never get sick, but yet you've been sick multiple times during this process, including the last one, which is why we're starting late on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I blame my wife for working at a school. And
that's not smart.
And children for not,
Dude,
not
children
understanding basic sanitation.
Children are rough. So we go back to Wisconsin like twice a year, and every time we go back, I get horribly ill because we have like a 2-year-old nephew who's, they like touch their nose and eyes and then rub it all over you. But the 7-year-old has this damn blanket that she's had since she was a baby, and it's like crusty. And you take it and she like rubs it in your face and she puts it in like I'm amazed I haven't had pink eye like 13 times coming back from Wisconsin over the past couple of years, but I always get some version of the plague when I come back.
Man.
So kids, stay away from kids.
Yeah, they're gross. So
for all those people out there who have kids.
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't have kids.
Sorry.
So I get to say
your kids are great. Just in general, the other kids are gross.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I always I didn't really understand that until I had a niece, and I would go to restaurants with her, and she's like 4, and it's like she's running around irritating everyone else in the restaurant, but we're like, oh, that's cute, like
because it's not yours.
Yeah,
so you don't have to worry about it.
When you're related to the kid, it's like they're cute, and so
yeah.
Tell me, James, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Not really. No, the only thing I did this year is, so I love sweets. I love them. I could literally eat a pie for every meal and I would be super, super happy. Erica, my wife, doesn't even really like sweets, but I love them. I wake up every morning. I have a little bite of sweets. I snack on sweets during the day. It's like a mouse enters our house and eats all the cookies and stuff slowly over the course of a day or two. And so that's what I gave up. So I gave it up for just January, and it's been horrible.
You gave up sweets, like all sugar, or?
So anything that I consider like a pastry or a sweet. I can't give up all sugar because then I can't even use jelly, and that's just wrong. So I gave up like sweets, like desserts essentially. And I'd rather give up air. Like it's freaking horrible. I hate it. Every day I just stare at the cabinet because I know there's chocolate up there, and I really want the chocolate. And some of it's left over from your podcast, from the birthday podcast. So I know that it's like a really good chocolate.
Oh, that's tough.
I'm just pissed off.
So my New Year's resolution, James, I've got a couple of them.
Okay.
So we'll see how I do on these. Now, my first New Year's resolution was to go back to the gym.
Yeah, that hasn't happened.
That hasn't happened yet, right? Because I was sick. So
yeah.
Well, I was. You can't work out when you're like...
No, that's true.
When you have like 102-degree fever and, you're hacking stuff up. Like you can't...
You can't, no. And you don't want to give anybody else whatever disease you have, so...
So I've started warming up this week now that I'm getting better. I've been warming my body up in preparation for the gym.
How do you warm your body up in preparation for going to the gym at some point?
doing like some dumbbell lifts, some push-ups, some sit-ups,
like 4 push-ups and like
yeah,
3
exactly.
sit-ups.
Yeah, exactly.
And then kick back some Lafroig 10 and go to sleep.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay. Got it.
I have like a 5-minute workout that I do right
5
before
minutes?
bed.
It's 5-minute abs. It's not
Well,
5-minute full body workout, Paul.
Well, see what happens, James. Let me teach you about working out and gains.
I know nothing about it, so please educate.
You have to activate the muscles. And activating those muscles daily, James, creates better gains than, when you work out for like a long period of time, like a couple hours at a time, you're not gaining anything because your body's just tired. So all you have to do is just like max out like 1 rep of every exercise.
And you're just max gains.
Yeah, well, because it shocks your body. The way your body works is like, oh man, I might have to lift that much weight again someday, so I'm gonna build more muscle.
You have no idea what you are talking about. But Tyler, don't you like how he looks like he's serious and he knows what he's talking about, but that is completely wrong. So everybody listening to us, do not follow Paul's workout schedule.
Now,
do what you're doing. You're doing well.
Now, that being said, you did create a workout regimen.
I did.
Me.
Yeah, we got to go. I got to get you going on it.
Yep. So that's New Year's resolution number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, much more controversial.
Uh-oh.
I am not going to buy a single bottle of whiskey in 2022.
I don't think that's possible for you.
Now, here's the thing. Here's where this came
there's
about.
A caveat.
James.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
There's no.
All right. Just
there's no caveats.
Okay.
I quit my job, and I'm working in a new company. So, there's the reasoning of lack of income. So budgeting. I realized I was spending way too much money on whiskey in general.
Oh yeah, I mean we all do.
I had to relocate. As you can see, our set is different, which means all my whiskey in this room got shifted around a bit. And I was like, I've got like 130 bottles of whiskey. There's physically no more space for it. I mean, there's just, well, I put up these shelves, so technically there's a little more space now,
yeah.
But there's no more space for it, and it's just too much. So my New Year's resolution for 2022 is to actually finish and drink some of the open bottles that I have instead of just acquiring new bottles.
Well, my resolution then is to help you do that. So I'm more than happy to come over and partake. I'm the same way though. So our entire kitchen is shelving that is filled with whiskey, and there's no room for anything else anymore. So we just keep kicking like the decorative items off the shelves and replacing it with bottles, which I like. Wife doesn't care for it as much as I do, but I'm running out of space too. And I'm starting a company, so I'm probably going to be like pulling back a little bit too. But one of the ones we're going to be trying today is a barrel that we just picked for jig. So I am going to continue to buy those bottles that at least I pick the barrels of, because they're fun to share and fun to talk about, especially on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, and you usually pick pretty good bourbon. So
I try. We have a group of folks and everybody does a really good job with it. And this one was one that we were unanimous on. So I'm excited to have you try it. And Tyler, I know you wanted to try it. So
speaking of, Tyler, if you grab any of the glasses on that very top shelf, watch out for my headphone cable. I don't know. One of them is, those are clean. So what did you bring today?
So I thought one of the things I want to do in the new season is I want to do distillery spotlights. And so
which we did some of in season 1, but
they were mostly smaller distilleries. I want to go with things that are more readily available. Like if you walk into a liquor store, everybody's going to find Wild Turkey, right? You're going to find Wild Turkey products. So I thought it would be really nice to, we'll do a Wild Turkey Day. Maybe we do a Buffalo Trace Day. We can do a Maker's Mark Day, and we can just spend time going through kind of the standard releases and just talking about pros and cons and price points.
Yeah, and I think that's good. Like on my Malt Mondays channel, I struggled for a while of whether or not I wanted to focus on doing bottles that like nobody had reviewed yet. And so, I would have the only content out there versus bottles that everyone's already reviewed because they're widely available. And where I kind of ultimately fell on that was like, it's okay to do some of the stuff that's more exclusive. But you know, it's like, what's the point of reviewing George T. Stagg and William LaRue Weller and all these like allocated rare stuff? It like, if that's your focus, or just entirely, you know, small, like, oh, you can only get it in this one town in one place because, you know, people don't have access to it. So I think we're going to try and balance that a little bit better this season, because I think we did, you know, the bigger brands that we talked about season 1 were more of just like topical, and we just had random bottles from those brands featured, but we didn't really talk about the brand itself.
Right.
And we only focused on the really small brands. So I think we're going to try and do a little bit of a better balance this season.
Yeah, and so today we picked up some Wild Turkey stuff. So we have Wild Turkey 101.
Which we did taste in season 1.
Right.
And I was surprised how much I liked it still after I hadn't had it in several years. After all these years, all these whiskeys, it's a good pour.
And I will note for the people who are looking, who are watching this, it is in a sexy plastic bottle. So, which in my opinion is the way that Wild Turkey 101 should be served, because that's how I saw it all the time growing up. So it is in a plastic jug. But the reason I picked it is because for those of you who don't know a whole lot about Wild Turkey, all the bourbon is the exact same recipe. It's the exact same mash bill. It's the exact same yeast strain. The only difference is whether it's kind of a select barrel, which we're going to talk about going into Kentucky Spirit as well as into Russel's Reserve. But 101 is really the base of all of their products. So when you try 101, that is the starting point for all of their other bourbon. And so I thought it made sense to revisit it again and just kind of use it as, you know, the background for what we're going to be doing moving forward.
Yeah. So I do think it's interesting. And this is just like a little bit of the grammar Nazi in me on the back label.
Uh-oh.
See, they actually put some information on here, which I find fascinating for a whiskey that comes in a plastic squeeze bottle. But it says, with a high rye content, this iconic bourbon is perfectly aged for up to 6 to 8 years. What does that mean? So it's aged up to, it could be 6 to 8 years, or it could be less.
So my understanding is that it's a blend of bourbon that's 6, 7, and 8 years.
Okay.
So instead of just saying a blend of 6, 7, and 8, they sort of shorten it to something that's a little bit.
I feel like they should have just said age 6 to 8 years, because if you say like aged up to 6 years, that sounds like a maximum, and then you give a range. I don't know. It's just a little bit of nitpicking, but
it does say high rye.
But it says high rye, and I find it interesting that 6 to 8 year bourbon for what the full size bottle retails for like $19, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, the 375 in plastic also retails for about $17 or $18. So if you're going to buy it, just go buy the full 750. But it was funny.
Maybe the price has gone up then.
Probably a little bit, but there was nothing around. Like I went to Total Wine on the way here because I wanted to get this in a rare breed. And they didn't even have any 101 and 750s. They had no rare breed. I called everywhere to try to find a rare breed. Nothing. Nobody has it. So when we have Ann back on, because I know rare breed is Ann's favorite bourbon, we need to get her to send us some rare breed, because I can't find it anywhere.
So, I mean, why do you think that is? Do you think rare breed specifically is, or did you just notice a lot of the other bourbons are out?
No, the shelves look full. I didn't see any problems with it. I see rare breed rye around, but I haven't seen the bourbon.
If you had just taken a picture of that empty rare breed shelf and posted it on a Facebook group, thousands of people across the U.S. would rush out to go buy rare breed because they think it's allocated, that it's going away, it's discontinued.
I don't know. I do think that it's one of those bottles that it's sort of in contention for best value for a barrel proof product. It's a really good pour. There's no question. If you like Wild Turkey, you're going to love rare breed. So maybe people are just sort of catching on to it, kind of in the way they caught on to 1792 full proof. For a long time, I thought that was one of the best, 120 proof bottles that you could find. I mean, it's really, really tasty. It's a very creamy mouthfeel to it that then the spice sort of breaks through a little bit. And I really, really enjoy that. And you'll see that, I think, in the Kentucky Spirit as well.
Now, I think it's interesting you say that, because I don't know if I would describe the 101 as creamy. To me, it's mostly spicy. But again, that high rye.
Yeah,
and
that's, we know you and rye.
Yeah,
right?
and so
It's-
like
yeah.
typically when I think of something creamier, I'm thinking like single malt can be a little bit creamy sometimes, but I do it is soft.
Yeah.
It's a softer bourbon.
And it's sweet. And I think it's the combination of the sweeter corn along with the softer profile that gives it that creamy mouthfeel to me. Now, when we move on to the Kentucky Spirit, so this is one that we just recently picked for Jigs Liquors. And it's just to give everybody kind of an insider view of this. When you pick a barrel of Wild Turkey, they send it to you at 110 proof.
Mm-hmm.
And so they send us 4 barrels at 110 proof. And you try through them at 110, and then they tell you, and they give you instructions for proofing it down to 101. And then you're supposed to try them at 101.
So why don't they send it to you at 101?
Because it's the same product, right? So if you like it at 110, you send it to them and you say, yes, I like it at 110. And they send it to you as Russell's Reserve. If you like it at 101, they water it down to 101 for you or proof it down to 101. And then they bottle it and send it to you as Kentucky Spirit. But it's the same product. The only difference is Russell's is higher proof at 110 versus 101, and they do not do chill filtering for Russell's. So it's funny because I think a lot of people hunt after Russell's because of that.
Mm-hmm.
They want the slightly higher proof point and they want the non-chill filter. And so we thought about that when we were picking the Kentucky Spirit, but nobody picks Kentucky Spirit barrels. And so they're a little bit more rare. So we went with the 101. Plus, when we tasted it with water or without, it was much, much better, I thought, at 101.
Almost like the Jim Russell Jim Russell?
Yeah.
Jim Russell. Almost like he knew what he was talking about when he said the Wild Turkey was better at 101.
Almost.
James, you might be the doctor of whiskey, but he's like one of the godfathers of whiskey.
He is.
So
I will say, though, I've had some Russell barrels that just are standouts.
Now,
there's no question.
I got to say, this Kentucky Spirit is a huge step up.
Oh, it's delicious.
From the 101.
Yeah.
This is really good.
It's really tasty. And folks, it's just the difference in the barrels they pick. So if the barrels are outstanding, they set them aside and they become Kentucky Spirit or Russell's Reserve. If it's one of their kind of standard barrels, then they all get batched together and blended and put into 101. Same product, same mash bill, same yeast strain, same everything. It just shows you how much variability you can have and how I think this is brilliant that you have just a single base spirit, but then you offer it in these different versions that really showcase the quality step up that you can get just from barrel to barrel and rickhouse to rickhouse, I'm sure.
Yeah. And this isn't a single barrel spirit. Well, this one is because you did a store pick.
Yeah.
But typically Kentucky Spirit wouldn't be single barrel, would it?
I think it's always single barrel. I think Kentucky Spirit and Russell's, Russell's Reserve has their standard and a single barrel, but the Kentucky Spirit's always single barrel.
So, when I taste these side by side from the 101 to the Kentucky Spirit has, to me, it's noticeable that the barrels were more active, that they mellowed the spirit a little bit more. They imparted more of the caramel, vanilla flavors. There's a little more of like the toasted barrel note. It's a more complex spirit all the way around.
And it's sweeter. It's still got a little bit of a spice to it, but the sweetness is what really gets me with Kentucky Spirit. It's honey, there's vanilla, and then to me, like I said, 101 was always kind of creamy on the mouthfeel. It gets kicked up to a huge amount with Kentucky Spirit. I personally out of all the Wild Turkey stuff, Kentucky Spirit is my favorite. And I'm probably a little bit in the minority there because most people gravitate towards the higher proof. But I just think Wild Turkey plays so well at the Kentucky Spirit level. To me, so do you know Andrew Sims?
Mm-hmm.
Andrew always talks about the perfect bourbon. So in his mind, Eagle Rare is the perfect bourbon. I always make fun of him for
Eagle
that.
Rare 10?
Yeah.
Oh,
and he doesn't mean it's the best. He just means that it's versatile. The flavor profiles are kind of spot on. I think Kentucky Spirit to me is sort of the perfect bourbon. I don't know anybody that I would give this to that wouldn't like it. If you've had bourbon and you're a whiskey fan, it's not crazy expensive.
How much is it? $50?
This was 60.
Yeah.
As a single barrel store pick, $60.
Yeah. So twice the price of standard Wild Turkey 101, but it's literally 3 to 4 times as good.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah.
And that's always the thing is people are like, well, why would I pay $60 for Kentucky Spirit when I could buy Russell's Reserve with a higher proof non-chill filter for the same price? Well, they're different flavor profiles. It just depends on what you want. I think your standard bourbon drinker is probably going to prefer Kentucky Spirit. To me, it's brighter, which we'll see when we try the Russells.
I'm gonna say Andrew Sims is wrong. Wow, the Eagle Rare
calling
10
out Andrew
is
Sims.
not. We'll get him on the podcast.
We'll have to get him on here,
because I've got a story about Eagle Rare 10. I liked it a lot when I first started drinking bourbon and whiskey in general. I would have said I would have agreed with him 6 years ago. What happened since then? 3 months ago, somebody posted on one of the groups like, hey, there's Eagle Rare Buffalo Trace at this store. And I was like, man, I haven't had Eagle Rare in like 6 years. I remember really liking it. I'm going to go buy a bottle. And I assumed because they posted that it was going to be at MSRP. Because usually, online people will post like if something's above MSRP, they'll be like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And everyone's like, I don't know. Like,
freaking question.
It's such a dumb
depends
question.
on how much money you make.
Right. It depends on how much money you make, how much you like that whiskey.
Just put yes. Always just put yeah. It's totally worth it.
Yeah.
Just buy it.
So, because they didn't mention anything about that, I assumed that, it's at MSRP. So I drove across town to go get it. And they're like, we're out. But we have it at our other store out in Ocala or wherever. So I had already driven, 30 minutes to go to this one store. And then they sent me to this other store. Sunken cost fallacy. I was like, I've put too much time into this, invested. Like, I have to go to the other store now. Went there and they're like, it's $70. And
oh boy,
it's supposed to be $30.
That's when you turn around and leave.
But here's the thing, James. I'd spent an hour
so then
plus
you
of my
you
life.
have a sunk cost already.
Yeah.
And so you have to sort of take that into consideration. So did you buy it?
Yes, I bought it.
Oh man, I feel bad for you.
Yeah, it's not that great.
No, it's not worth $70. I agree.
Barely worth $30 compared to some of the other $30 bourbons.
If you poured
in my opinion,
if you poured me Eagle Rare and Wild Turkey 101 next to one another, I'd pick Wild Turkey 101.
I think I would too.
Even out of the plastic bottle, I would, or out of one of the minis, which obviously has mini flavor. Yeah. I would take that.
I think I would too. So here's I'm gonna put Andrew Sims.
We're gonna have a whiskey fight on here pretty soon.
We're gonna get him on the podcast. But. Even if we can't right away, I'm going to have Tyler pour us a couple of $30 bourbons blind, and we're just going to pick our favorite.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
And I want to see if Eagle Rare, the $70 Eagle Rare.
I'm going to look at the camera when I say this. Andrew Sims, your shit just got called out on our podcast. So you're coming on the podcast, and we're going to do a blind $30 tasting. And we're going to see. The thing is, though, this dude drinks enough Eagle Rare that I guarantee you he can pick that shit out blind, like immediately. Between that and Stag Junior, like half of his shelf is Eagle Rare and Stag Junior.
Yeah, so he'll probably know what he's tasting.
Yeah, and he's just gonna pick that one anyway, just to screw up your argument. But yeah, let's have him on. I don't use the word perfect bourbon. For me, perfect bourbon means it's the best I've had, and for me, that's 2014 Stag.
Yeah,
and nothing else compares to that. But I get what he means.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I know what he means, and I think
you respectfully disagree.
I respectfully disagree. I think the perfect bourbon is Michter's 10-year-old.
Oh, that's junk. Oh, that's junk. You got to be kidding me. Especially for that price point. That's a disaster.
Price is irrelevant.
Oh man.
It's the perfectly balanced bourbon.
Dude, this one is so much better. Kentucky Spirit is so much better than Michter's 10.
I don't disagree that it's better, but that doesn't make it the perfect bourbon.
God damn. I even know what to do with you,
I
Paul.
want to do a whole episode.
Go do one push-up or something, and let me do the rest of the show by myself.
Hey, if I go do that one push-up, I'm gonna come back.
You're gonna
swole.
be huge. You'll be
huge.
totally
It'll
swole.
be scary. All right.
So now we're moving
on.
We're moving on to the Russells. So good story behind the Russells. My friend Chad is a pilot. And so he flew into Ohio, and
oh my gosh, Ohio!
I
Can
know.
we go one episode without somebody talking about Ohio?
I'm gonna bring up Ohio at any given cost. But he always goes to liquor stores, and like he'll call me when I've trained him well. I've told him like when you go on these trips, like if you got an overnighter, go check out some liquor stores.
That was a good core pop.
It was a good one. And he stopped in Ohio, and he was like, "Hey, like they have a Russell's Reserve pick that's like it's an Ohio only release." And he was like, should I buy it? And I was like, yeah, whatever. It's $60. Grab it. And so he did. So the specs on this bad boy, these are all 110 proof. It's non-chill filtered. So again, we're in that non-chill filtered range where we were not with Kentucky Spirit. This is Warehouse F. I'm assuming that's not the Camp Nelson. So here's the tricky thing. They have two different primary aging sites, and they both have a Warehouse F. But my understanding is that we'll say CNF if it's Camp Nelson. Although I did read an article say that they've quit doing that and you can't tell. But this is Warehouse F, and it was distilled in December of 2012 and bottled in May of 2021.
Ooh, that's good.
So it's a decent size age. Yeah. Now, tell me this doesn't taste entirely different than the Kentucky Spirit.
I think this is darker and fruitier to me.
They're cherry bombs.
Yeah.
Russell's Reserve to me are cherry bombs. And it's amazing to me that just the proof difference and the non-chill filtering creates that, but they're fruitier.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that blind. I don't know if I would think these were from the same distillery or not. I feel like because we've only got one glass today, but so we're not tasting them truly side by side. Without going back and forth, I don't know how much of the DNA is there that's similar. So since we just tasted the Kentucky Spirit, pretty much all you're going to taste going into the Russells is those different flavors.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know, like if we were going back and forth, how different they would taste, but it does taste. To me, the Kentucky Spirit was more on the caramel, vanilla, toffee, those kind of flavor side, and this is more on the dark fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Russell's Reserve, if you're going to put it in sort of common terms, I think Russell's Reserve is more of a rustic bourbon. It's a little bit harsher. The proof is a little bit higher. It's definitely fruity. There's more tannic notes. It's a bigger, deeper spirit. Kentucky Spirit to me is maybe more refined and more of a delicate whiskey in a very, very good way because you get those sweet up front. So if I'm sitting by a campfire and I'm wearing like shit made out of animal skins and I have a big beard, like I want Russell's Reserve, right? If I'm in like my smoking room and I have my little fancy robe on that you gave me and I'm just like, circling something a little bit and taking a couple sips of it, I want the Kentucky Spirit.
I think that's a very apt description. And, whiskey and like spirits in general, I always think it's kind of interesting. Like, when we had Ann on, we asked her tasting notes on stuff. And, I was expecting it to be like super analytical, as far as like being a blender. And she's like, this one tastes like it's going to go to college soon and never call me again, and it's like,
she referred to one as an angsty teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the beauty of, and this is why I always encourage people to build collections of whiskey. It doesn't need to be like what I've got is overboard. 100 plus bottles is ridiculous, but get to the point where you start buying your next bottle before you finish the first one. So you can build up having 5 or 6 bottles. And that can be, if it's all Kentucky Spirit, if it's all different barrels of Kentucky Spirit, that's a great collection to have. If it's every bottle in the Wild Turkey range, that's a great little collection to have, because what it's going to allow you to do is, instead of just drinking the one bottle that you have, now you can kind of tailor it to your mood. and the setting that you're in. And I feel like that's where a lot of whiskeys, that's where their place is. They aren't the whiskey that you reach for every day. Like Russell's Reserve to me is a little much. Like I wouldn't just reach for it just casually. I'm sitting at my computer working on stuff and I want a sip of whiskey. Like that's a whiskey that I think of more of I bring out for somebody. It's a little more of like a talking point because it's a little more different, or I'm just sitting down just to drink that whiskey and like focus on it a little bit more versus like Wild Turkey 101 is you're watching football and you're just having several glasses throughout the day, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Russell's Reserve is it's a mood pour. Like I have to be in a mood to drink that.
But Kentucky Spirit's just great all the
Kentucky
time.
Spirit, I could drink all day. Yeah. Like breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like I don't care. Like it's
when you
good.
get up in the middle of the night
put it
for
on
your...
put it on my cereal, put it on my ice cream at 3 a.m. Like whatever. It's just good. Like there's no time. And you know, in Florida too, we're very like we have to drink whiskey when it's really hot outside. Yeah. I don't want to drink Russell's when it's hot, but I can drink Kentucky Spirit when it's hot. So it just sort of depends on what you lean towards. To me, Russell's Reserve always is just, there's more tannin in it, and I have to be in the mood for that cherry. Like they always are cherry bombs to me. To varying degrees, but this one has a little bit of that as well. Although I do think this is one of the better Russell's Reserve picks I've had in quite a while.
Yeah, I think I slightly prefer the Kentucky Spirit.
I prefer it by quite a bit.
But I don't know. I think it would be more of what you look for in a whiskey. And bourbon, I'm not always wild about like the darker, fruitier bourbons. Because to me, what it needs to go with that is a little bit more age, more oak and leathery notes to go with that dark fruit character.
Yeah.
And then that's where I really like that character. So, you know, then we're talking about stuff you know, that's older than 6 to 8 years, you know, in that 10-ish year range. So,
yeah, I agree. I think your point too of having, you know, a range of bottles is really good too, because, and I encourage people to do this. Like I'll hand people the bourbon occasionally. I'll be like, here, try this. And they're like, yeah, I don't like it. I'm like, okay, why? And they're like, yeah, I just don't like it. Spend some time with it. Even if you don't like it, spend time with it and figure out why you don't like it.
Yep.
Is it too tannic? Is it too fruity? Is there not enough kick to it? Because all of that helps inform you on your next purchase, and you'll make smarter buys if you spend time with bottles you don't like. There's value in flavor profiles you don't like.
Yep.
And if you build that collection up, that helps.
I actually almost drink more of the whiskeys that I don't like
just to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because.
Or do you just not like yourself and you're like, I don't like me today. I'm going to drink this crap.
No, but you know, just as an example, the Balvenie Sweet Toast of American Oak that came out this year or last year. I think I traded you the rest of that bottle for something. And when I did my review of that, the very first time I tasted it, I was like, this tastes weird. And I don't like it. And then I gave it to my friend Brandon, and we did it in a tasting, and I tried it. I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And then the third time I tried it, I was like, no, this is trash.
It depends. Like, I agree. I tried that bottle with you, and sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. And that's the other thing is it depends on what you've had to eat. It depends on what you drank before it. Sometimes it just depends on your mood. If I'm in a shitty mood, I like a different bourbon than I do when I'm in a good mood.
Right.
So, yeah, it's all information.
And so as I worked through, you know, a third of that bottle, what I came to realize is like what I don't like about that particular whiskey is that it's a little like overproduced. Like the barrel finish on it is just like a little overdone. It just gives it this slightly odd character to it. And because of that, there's certain times where I'm kind of digging it and sometimes I'm not.
Yeah.
And it really just depends what you're looking for. And you know, that's where like, that's why I don't review samples of things. There's a reason why I never review like from a sample, because when you try something once, you don't have enough of a frame of reference of what you really feel about that whiskey. Now, sometimes something is so incredible that like you're just like, oh yeah, that's really good. But to review something and really speak fully about it, you kind of have to try something several times over several different settings and days, because there's whiskeys that I have. Glenfiddich 21-year-old rum cask is a good example. When I reviewed that whiskey, I loved it. I was just like, it was perfect time and place and everything. And I went to show it to somebody and I was like, this is not as good as I remember it being. Like, it's a little anemic. It's a little meh, and I just kind of realized like I let that like one day and time and place where I was like, this is it, influence me a little too much. So that's kind of the value of having multiple bottles where you're not drinking the same thing every day, because that can influence you a different way also. Of
I agree.
You get so used to that flavor, you build up, you forget that there might be something you like more too.
You know what I've noticed in this? That's a really good point, because I do the same thing. When I was reviewing stuff for Bourbon Sippers a lot, I would sit down one day and I'd try it. I'd write down a bunch of notes, and then I would come back the next day and try it again. And sometimes I add notes, sometimes I subtract things, but I sort of refine my review over a period of days. And that made a huge difference for me, because I think you're getting then your sort of average impression of it rather than just your impression at that moment that you try it. And the other thing I've noticed is it's kind of like if you've been on a diet and like you don't get red meat, let's say, for like a month, and then somebody gives you a steak. That's the best damn steak you've ever had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it is amazing. It's your favorite steak you've ever had. And then you go have another steak and you're like, oh, that one's even better. Like, that other one was crap. I do the same thing with whiskey. If I don't drink whiskey on a regular basis, the first pour I have when I come back, I'm like, oh, that's delicious.
Yeah.
So I have to sort of pay attention to what I've been doing recently and what my mindset is around whiskey when I try them. If I really want to get a good, I guess, feel for the quality of the whiskey, or my personal take on the quality of the whiskey.
Yeah, and I think it's good to give your palate a break sometimes. I mean,
drink tequila. Do something something
exactly.
different. Like, cleanse your palate of whiskey.
I just know, like, a lot of the other reviewers and stuff, they'll take a couple weeks each year or every 6 months, and and I do it too. Every few months, I just like no whiskey for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And like, I'll have wine or beer or something.
Don't review them right after that.
Right. Yeah.
You got to give yourself a roll into it.